From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. Today we start in Mexico, where the U.S. Border Patrol has arrested 42 migrants who managed to cross the border into the United States on Sunday. The majority of those detained were men. They were part of a group of about 500, mostly Honduran migrants, who approached the San Isidro crossing in Tijuana. Most were driven back with tear gas, but some of them appear to have got through at a point where a small section of the wall was torn down. The outgoing Mexican government now says it is deporting 93 of the migrants involved in Sunday's confrontation. Our correspondent Alina Duarte is on the Mexican side of the crossing a day after violence erupted there.
We are by the bridge that leads to the San Isidro border crossing. This is one of the busiest crossings on the border with Mexico. Hundreds of migrants have gathered here. They came from the shelter where more than 5,000 of them are now staying. The Mexican Federal Police have blocked their path. They want to let the U.S. government know that they are here to request asylum, even though their request could take months to process. It seems like this is as close to the border as they're going to get today. On their way here, they thanked the Mexican people and the city of Tijuana for the hospitality they have received, and they also asked for forgiveness for any inconvenience they might have caused. Nonetheless, they have repeated their intentions to try to reach the United States, or their intention to remain peacefully here in Mexico if they are given work. This seems to be the route being sought by the new government that will take office here in less than a week from now, with Andrés Manuel López Obrador as president. Many of these migrants have already been here in Tijuana for 2 weeks, and they're getting quite desperate because the U.S. authorities have not responded to their requests. Some of them want to get closer to the border, but as I said, the Mexican police are blocking their path.
We thank Alina for that report. The violence on Sunday began after a peaceful demonstration by migrants approached the border crossing. The U.S. Border Patrol fired tear gas and, according to some reports, rubber bullets as some of the demonstrators got past Mexican security forces and headed to the San Isidro crossing. Women and children were seen trying to escape from the gas.
We were all together, and they started throwing tear gas, and they hit a journalist in the head.
We were walking and telling the U.S. border officers not to throw tear gas at us because we weren't doing anything, and they started throwing bombs at us. All the police and cameramen were there.
We went near the border in a peaceful march, and the American officers got upset because we were too close to the border. The alarm went off, and they began throwing tear gas at us. A lot of people started to go down. A person got hit, and lots of kids fainted. So some people got rocks and threw it at the officers because many kids were fainting. We just took them to the doctor, and now we are coming back, and there's still tear gas. I don't know what happened just now.
These images show migrants running from tear gas at the border crossing. President Donald Trump said last week that he had authorized the U.S. military to use lethal force against the migrants if necessary, but no military personnel took part in Sunday's violence. Trump also threatened to close the entire border with Mexico. Other Central American migrants are in Tijuana awaiting word on their asylum request. Many migrants want to cross despite the xenophobic and anti-immigrant policies in the U.S. Donald Trump has tried to prevent them from entering the country and said that migrants who enter illegally from Mexico will not be allowed to apply for asylum. This despite the fact that a judge temporarily suspended his order.
We are desperate, waiting for a positive response. We hope that the authorities can come to an agreement. It is not our intention to dismiss Mexican people. Our hope is to receive news for Christmas. Good news for my family back in Honduras.
Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has called on the armed forces to help fight violence, corruption, and insecurity in the country. This is the first time an elected president has met with the military before taking office. His speech was directed to 32,000 members of the armed forces from the Army, Air Force, and Navy. López Obrador has proposed to reform the constitution to the effect of creating a national guard, unifying different security forces.
Currently, according to our constitution, armed forces cannot participate in public security tasks, neither the Army nor the Navy. So, how are we going to face this problem if there is no constitutional reform?
Representative-elect for the Democratic Party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has asserted that migrants cannot be criminalized. In her social media channels, Ocasio-Cortez recalled that migrants built the U.S., showing that the seemingly impossible is in fact possible. She also pointed out that when the United States denies migrants, it denies its own essence. She added that in the heart of a society, there are migrants who have earned Nobel Prizes, as well as artists and tradesmen. In addition, the representative-elect, who is an activist for human rights, said that applying for official status in the United States is not a crime. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Argentina, social movements and organizations start the week with different political and cultural activities and protests against the G20 summit and the IMF. The Argentine capital, Buenos Aires, is preparing for an intensive week of demonstrations before the G20 Leaders Summit, which will be held next Friday and Saturday. Almost all of the political parties, trade unions, social movements, and human rights organizations, which are against Macri, will be part of multiple marches and demonstrations in rejection of the current state of affairs in the country. Meanwhile, Patricia Bullrich's security ministry has engaged in a multi-million policy and security operation, and a large portion of public transportation will be paralyzed. Chile is seeing one of the worst political crises of recent history following the murder of the young Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca. Protesters are demanding the resignation of the Interior Minister.
9 days after the assassination of the young Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca, Chilean President Sebastián Piñera decided to visit the region of the Araucanía. A popular uprising was already beginning, and his presence unleashed even more anger. Sabotage of deforestation machinery, blockades and protests in Temuco, Ericilla, Angol, and Victoria. This is how President Piñera arrived in Hualmapu. He held meetings with local authorities in the Amor por Chile pavilion, but when he attempted to give some sort of message of conciliation, he denied the existence of police repression against communities.
I want to repeat that there is not Comando Jungla. It is an invention or a name that was given by some of the media. What does exist is special forces that exist just as they do in all regions of Chile. And in the case of the Araucanía, they have held a training and received special technological funding.
But the experience in the territory is different. Leonardo Curinao, from the Coñomil Epuleo community, has had several face-to-face encounters. He was hit with a bat, but the police who had been trained in Colombia were equipped with weapons of war. Ada Huentecol, Brandon's mother, says that the police broke her son's hip. Indignant, she doesn't speak from the territory while the president carried out his extremely brief visit to the Araucanía.
The truth is that this president is a clown. He looks us in the face like we are dumb. We are not dumb. These are the real terrorists who attack the Mapuche people on a daily basis.
The president's statements have only worked to spread uncertainty. For months, the media has referred to the Jungle Command, yet the government continues to deny its existence. Because of transparency laws, we were given the invested amount in police training used to repress the Mapuche people. And in other documents, the existence of that command is all but confirmed. However, President Piñera may have reason. From Colombia, we have confirmed that in order to actually graduate as a jungle command, one must pass 18 months of demanding training. Several of your colleagues called me from Chile. I don't know what is the situation at this time with the command. You have spent the last 30 years training and preparing police from different parts of the world. The protests continue. They demand the resignations of the Interior Minister, Andrés Chadwick. who is a cousin of the president, who, whether with the title of jungle or not, is the one who is in charge of the Chilean police, the same police which entered the Temucuicui community mid-year, where Camilo was assassinated.
Beyond the mistakes that have committed by a few policemen that will always go punished, the job of Chilean police, an institution for which I have the greatest recognition and gratitude, is to protect our lives.
Questions remain, and not only for the Mapuche who, like Camilo Catrillanca, were killed by bullets of the state, but also for all those who protest the militarization and criminalization by the Chilean state.
6 people were killed at the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic after an argument. We warn you that these images you are about to see may be disturbing to some viewers. Haitian police have confirmed that 4 custom officers and 2 civilians died Saturday in the town of Malpassi. A police officer had shot a person who tried to cross the border with merchandise without stopping. A group of civilians then retaliated by setting a barricade on fire. The killings comes as Haiti faces week-long anti-corruption protests. Sunday, November 25th was the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and right here in Quito, more than 10,000 people marched to raise awareness about the different forms of violence Ecuadorian women face on a daily basis. People of all ages and backgrounds gathered to protest domestic violence, sexual abuse, and harassment against women. They demanded equal rights in the workplace.
We are here to resist because the government continues to be negligent with our lives, with our vulnerabilities. There are more than 1 million people missing. For the government, it doesn't matter that women are dying. The justice system does nothing, and sexual abuse keeps happening, which is just simply outrageous. This march is our way to say that we are fed up and we are a community fighting for our justice together, a feminist justice.
The Dominican Republic also marked the day with a huge protest. In the capital, Santo Domingo, women gathered to protest against all kinds of violence. November 25th, as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, was first set to honor the 3 Maribal sisters who were murdered in the Dominican Republic by the Trujillo dictatorship. Now women across the globe take to the streets every 25th of November to raise awareness about violence. Colombian citizens have condemned the rise of gender violence figures in Bogotá. Men, women, and children gathered in the capital of the country to celebrate the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. According to the National Institute of Legal Medicine, murders committed against women have risen from 758 in 2017 to 796 so far in 2018. The main threat for Colombian women is violence within the family. And staying in Colombia, a Guinness World Record was set to support women's rights. More than 4,000 Colombians lit glow sticks in the country's capital, Bogotá. This in support of women's rights and nonviolence against women. The organizers said Colombia supports peace and the end of all kinds of violence, in reference to their decades of armed conflict.
It is a very important recognition because we just signed for peace, and I think the whole world is looking at Colombia to see if we can achieve it. And this is a way of saying we Colombians are really against violence against women, and of course that we want peace.
I am more than just a man. I am also a partner and a son. I would not like to see any kind of violence towards the people that I love, towards women.
And women in Mexico also marched to demand justice for victims of femicide. Chanting slogans and carrying pink crosses across Mexico City, they condemned violence against women. Some of them were dressed as brides, in reference to intimate partner violence. According to the UN, 7 women are killed every day in Mexico. The Caribbean has one of the highest rates of rape and intimate partner violence in the world. This performance you are seeing from Trinidad critiques the view that women are valued primarily for cooking, cleaning, and reproducing.
Cook, clean, make babies repeat. Cook, clean, make babies repeat. Man was made to believe that woman was made.
A group of congressmen in Brazil is promoting an alliance of social movements for social rights. This as a way to counter threats made by the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro.
Brazilian congressmen and politicians have met with activists from the landless workers' movement to offer their support against Jair Bolsonaro's threat to treat social movements as terrorists.
The upcoming government is threatening not only the social rights of Brazilian people that took so many years to achieve, but also it threats with political persecution, so left-wing parties and social movements are potential enemies. This solidarity is not only for parties and movements, but also to build a democratic front against the new policies of the upcoming government.
The front also wants authorities to face a reality marked by the country's housing deficit, estimated in 6 million houses, and the concentration of 45% of the land in just 1% of the landowners.
This will be a neo-fascist government, but ultra-liberal. This means it's going to sell all public companies. This won't benefit people nor will give solution to social problems. The opposite. We're going to have many social problems as we already have, in health, in education, and workers' rights that probably won't be solved by this government. And for that reason is that we need to continue to fight in the streets.
During the meeting, leftist leaders analyzed measures to resist the new situation by the elected government.
Bolsonaro's government works over society by symbols. Meanwhile, the classic fascism seeks for the eternal enemy. The neo-fascism seeks to choose some enemies. In Brazil's case, the internal enemies are those who are not part of what they call the Brazilian nation. So they promote bad image against the landless and homeless movements.
Bolsonaro will take office on January 1st, but social movements are already afraid congressmen will take their seats 1 month after.
Now to Jamaica, where the University of the West Indies is set to receive £200 million in a repatriation payment from the UK's Glasgow University. UWIS Vice-Chancellor Sir Hilary Beckles says Glasgow University has recognized that Jamaican slave owners had adopted the UK university as their institution of choice, and that £200 million of value was extracted from Jamaica and the Caribbean. He also said that both universities are currently drafting an MOU, and the term reparatory justice is expected to be included.
Institute for Leadership for Graduates. Our alumni.
Of the peace accord in Colombia, Telesur has prepared several special reports to understand the current state of the agreement. This final report looks at the mechanism for verifying implementation of the peace deal.
Isabella is one of the 7,000 combatants who 2 years ago made a commitment to the people of Colombia to leave behind an armed conflict that lasts for more than 50 years. And although she knows the fight continues, no weapon is needed.
I think the fact that we are unarmed, but instead we have a backpack, changes the forum, but not the ideas of revolution, transformation, equality, and women's rights.
Even though the ideas and the fight continues, the Colombian state has not complied with everything they promised, especially with the reincorporation of the former combatants, which is the 6th point of the final accord.
The non-compliance has been total. Nowadays, there are no green zones, and our territories are not owned by us, but rather assigned.
The former combatants continue to build projects that will serve them as a tool to transform the country.
More than 250 initiatives are taking place in the country. The goal we have is 190 tons of corn to sell. We are producing 40 tons of fish meat since January.
Today, the ex-combatants, campesino, indigenous and Afros are facing not only the lack of compromise by the Colombian government, but also the state's abandonment on the wave of murders against those who are betting for a new country.
This year alone, 191 social leaders have been murdered, 213 threatened, and almost 80 ex-combatants have been murdered. We are deeply worried.
Despite of all the difficulties the peace process has for Isabella, there are also unique moments that the war would have never offered, like seeing someone who was your enemy in the war zone without a gun.
When the police arrived, we were both very cordial. We had finally realized that now there are other stories to write.
2 years have passed after an accord full of pain, grief, but overall resistance. That resistance that these former combatants refuse to lose, even if it cost their life.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. 7 people have died and 5 others were injured in Somalia when a car bomb exploded at a market in the capital. The incident happened after security forces stopped to examine a suspicious car at the market in the south of the city. No group has claimed responsibility, but authorities suspect Somalia's Al-Qaeda affiliate is behind the attack. They are known to carry out regular bombings and armed assaults. The Russian foreign minister has accused Ukraine of dangerous moves after a naval confrontation between the two countries. The minister said Ukraine has violated international norms using methods that created threats and risk for the movement of ships in the area. On Sunday, Russia seized 3 Ukrainian ships close to Crimea, accusing the country of illegally entering Russian waters. Ukraine is demanding the release of its ships and sanctions. And now let's take a look at some of the headlines from around the world.
In France, yellow vest protesters have maintained their presence in the city of Dunkirk in the north of the city. They have said they will not stop protesting until President Emmanuel Macron resigns. Protests over fuel taxes have become more frequent and at times violent since starting on November 17th. 1 person has died in the demonstrations. Japanese car company Mitsubishi has fired businessman Carlos Ghosn from his role as a chairman and representative director. Ghosn was dismissed after his arrest in Japan for alleged financial misconduct. He has already been sacked as a chairman of Nissan and now faces questioning in a Tokyo detention center.
Keeping Mr. Carlos Ghosn on the board and in the post of company chairman and representative director risks the firm's reputation.
A huge sandstorm has hit the Gansu province in northern China. A yellow cloud covered the region, causing fires, and security forces have to be deployed to ensure resident safety. Visibility in the affected area was reduced to less than 100 meters.
4 soldiers have been killed in Turkey when a military helicopter crashed in a residential area of Istanbul. The helicopter was on a training flight when it crashed. It is not yet known what caused the crash. Another Turkish soldier was wounded in the incident. Medical services are at the site and the defense minister is expected to visit the area. An investigation is underway. At least 30 people have drowned in Uganda and more than 60 are feared dead after a party boat sank in Lake Victoria. Authorities say the boat carrying nearly 100 passengers sank, most likely due to overloading and bad weather. This is just the latest deadly incident on Africa's largest lake. In September 2018, hundreds of people died after a ferry sank on the Tanzanian side of the lake. The celebrated Italian filmmaker Bernardo Bertolucci has died in Rome. The director of Last Tango in Paris and The Last Emperor passed away at the age of 77 after a short illness. The winner of 2 Oscars, Bertolucci is considered one of the greatest Italian film directors. African musicians have gathered in Ghana's capital, Accra, to attend the All-African Music Awards, Africa's equivalent of the Grammys. Nigeria's Davido won the trophy for Artist of the Year, while Betty G from Ethiopia took home Album of the Year. Best African DJ went to Afrotronics, who has roots in Chad. The awards are a platform to showcase the African music industry.
I'm happy to be here because I feel that this is Africa coming together, you know, an event like this with such amount of superstars, so I'm very thrilled.
I'm sure it's gonna change many things for me or for other winners to spread African music in all over the world, because we all know that Africa is the mother of the groove, of the beat, of the sound.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And for our viewers in Africa, remember, you can find us on StarSat, channel 461 in South Africa, and channel 531 in Nigeria. Also, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.